That's really beautiful. Thank you. That song was written by Robin Hackett, and Robin Hackett was a featured musician in one of the video curriculums that we will be using in the Spirit Groups program that we've been talking to you about. So we were introduced to that song while we previewed it going through the pilot program, and it just felt like the perfect song for today, when we're talking about connections today. And I know that many of us feel like when we found unity or New Thought, it felt like we had come home, that we had come home to our hearts. And primarily because this message resonated with what we already felt to be our truth. And that's a wonderful thing. I get to witness that as people come into the community and say, gosh, all my life I've sort of felt this way or thought this way or believed this way, and I didn't know that there was a community that, felt this way, believed this way. And so there is that sense of, coming home. It feels like, sometimes we can feel like our thoughts and our ideas and our sensibilities and our worldview and our beliefs about God and spirituality, we can feel like we're exiles, that we're strangers in a strange land until we find a community in which these teachings resonate with the very same way that we see the world and see life. And Denise and I had that experience in San Luis Obispo some 25 years ago. And it was lovely. And we were so grateful to have found that place. It was sort of a time of revival of spirituality for us. Both of us had sort of fallen, I guess you would say we became jaded in our faith, not really feeling like it was alive for us in the way that we wanted it to be. And but there was always something stirring in us. There was always this spiritual spark, this spiritual undertone. It never really goes away, even though sometimes we can profess that we don't have our faith or we don't believe, because it's our essential nature. It's what we're made out of. It can't really go anywhere. It can only go underground. It can only go under the radar of conscious awareness. And so when we found this unity experience up in San Luis Obispo, we loved going there on Sundays. And yet we realized after a time that just coming and sitting and listening to the message, as much as we enjoyed and received inspiration from that, it wasn't enough for us to fully feel at home there, that there was something missing. And what was missing that we needed to do something about was we didn't feel connected to the people. We were strangers, by and large. And although we might have an occasional conversation with somebody who, happened to be sitting next to us, or as we were, going out the door, having a quick cup of coffee, it was really clear that there were people that were deeply connected with each other and had satisfying relationships, and there was a sense of belonging that people were experiencing that we weren't experiencing. And so what we had to do was to find our way to get connected into the community that we were in order to really feel at home and know that this would be a place that we would want to stay. And so Denise and I, in our own way, we decided to get involved in service. And Denise got involved right away. We had let's see, how old was our youngest son? 5 at that time? 5. We had a 5-year-old son at the time. And so Denise got involved with the youth program and helped out in teaching the kids. And I got involved in sweeping the parking lot. That was, I think, my first job. They asked me if I would sweep, and I said, I can do that, And then progressively into other areas of service in the church. And by doing that, we found that we began getting connected to other people in meaningful ways, which is really important, especially if you're an introvert. Any introverts in here? There's a lot of us. You don't have to put your hands up. And The introverts don't put their hands up, so it's like everybody whose hand did not go up, those are the introverts. And because the introverts have a real difficult time, don't we know, having sort of casual conversations. The small talk just drains us, So if it's up to us to have to go around and sort of, shake hands and say, hi, how you doing? What a nice day. We're just like, we don't want any part of it, right? We like to sit with people and we like to have meaningful conversations and go deeper than that. Like, what do you think is causing this drought? That would be more interesting. But not just another pretty sunny day. And then we don't know what to say after that. So this idea of getting involved in the community must meet you at the level of your sensibilities and who you are. And so it's so much more likely that you feel connected when you're doing something that matters, or that you're having conversations that matter, or that you're providing a service that makes a difference. And so that's really is the path, if you're wondering. How do we feel connected to a community that this may be a new experience for you, or it may be an old experience for you? I know there's people that they're coming to this church for many years, and I've known this in other churches as well. They come, they sit, they enjoy the service, and they get up and they leave, and they're not connected to the community. And if that's your choice, that's absolutely fine. But if it's not really where you want to go, if you really feel like you do want to get connected to other people, you want to feel like you belong, like you're an integral part of this community, for all of the values that could be there for you in terms of feeling like you have an extended family, you have an extended level of support, you have people that care about you, that care about your well-being, they would miss you if you were gone, that kind of thing. And if that's what you're wanting, then there are ways to do that. And the way that's been going on here all along has been you could get involved in a service project or a service team. You could volunteer to do something. You could help out with hospitality, or you could usher, or you could go through a prayer training program and become a prayer minister, or you could some other leadership opportunities here. But what we were recognizing is that's still a very narrow way for many people to get connected. There aren't that many service opportunities here. And there aren't that many ways that you can get involved. We don't have a lot of affinity groups, for example. We don't have a men's group or a women's group or things like that going on presently. So this is why we're so excited about the Spirit Groups program, because the Spirit Groups program is precisely to meet the general requirements or the needs of people to feel connected in this community in a way that's very meaningful, in a way that you would actually experience the reason that you would want to join with other people for your own spiritual growth, to feel that you could be a part of a small community, 8 or 10 people, in which you would share your spiritual journey together. You would be in a place where you could be listened to, where you could be respected, where you could share openly, where there would be an authentic experience of being with other people, where there is no hierarchy, where the hierarchy is flattened by the circle that you gather in, where there's an opportunity for there to be a shared experience of oneness. Even though we use this word all the time, about oneness, and that we are all one in God, we are one in spirit, it's hard to experience that when you're all facing one direction. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're all looking at the back of somebody's head. Whereas when you get into a circle, although that may feel vulnerable, it's actually the way we connect. It's actually what our heart yearns for. We are wired for connection. Did you know? This is more than just a sentimentality. There's all kinds of studies, and I would not bore you with all of them, but of course you can Google the topic, what is the value of human connections, and you'll find countless studies. But one of them was done by a UCLA professor, Matthew Lieberman, in his first book, Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And he says that our need to connect is as basic as our need for food and water and shelter. So it isn't just that sort of thing that we may toss out, like, wouldn't it be nice if I was connected? But the absence of connection in our life can have significant dilatory effects upon our well-being and our health. In fact, the opposite of connection is isolation. And they have shown that isolation is as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That people who have the best social networks are the healthiest people, live the longest, have the most sense of well-being. And the people that are the most isolated, well, it's the other picture. It's the reverse of that. So we know that we are wired to connect, and if that is who we really are, if that's what we want, is to be connected with each other, then this is the most natural thing we can do. And then what we need to do is find a natural way of facilitating that natural impulse. And that's what we feel the Spirit Groups is going to do for us. So, I don't want to oversell or overhype anything because, you're on this side of not experiencing it. But I have experienced it, and those of us in the pilot group have experienced it. And it's been the most successful model of connecting people and getting people feeling cared about and connected in a spiritual community that's ever been done. And it's been done across many, 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 many thousands of people around the country. And spiritual communities that are using this model are the healthiest, most thriving, and most dynamic communities. So we have lots of reasons to trust that this process will be effective for us as well. And yet we don't ask anyone to accept that, but to be open to try and to take the opportunity when these spirit groups get formed, which will be happening in the next few weeks, to enter in. And we will be providing, we will be training hosts, so the facilitation process will be healthy, it will be good, it will support the kind of good connections that we are really here to have, the ones that we really will feed us, that will really serve our deepest needs to connect. I don't want to skip over and forget what we said in the first week, though, and then tie it in with today's. The first week, we were talking about these 5 spiritual disciplines. The first one, we said, was communion. And communion is really aligning ourselves with God, with Spirit. It's our primary relationship. Before we are to connect with another, we must know what we are. We must have this centeredness, this feeling of being one with this divine presence that is what we really are and where we come from. Our true identity. We say in unity, we talk about the Christ within, the Christ Spirit within. We talk about the kingdom of God is at hand, it's here, it's now. Christ in you, your hope of glory. When we say that we are children of God, and as Paul said, if children, then heirs to all that God is. So this is primary, and this is where we start. And as I mentioned to you a moment ago, that was our experience when we came into the Unity Church, as we got the message. We got the message of this Spirit, and it became alive in us. We felt this awakening happening in us, of this spiritual awakening. And so that's primary. But it's not enough, because you notice, if you look around, you're not alone. And if we were designed to do this life and do this work and to grow spiritually, then we would be all sent off into caves by the masters. But the masters, we watched the masters. Jesus was very good about this. He would go up into the mountains and he would pray, and then he would come down. He didn't stay in the cave. He didn't stay in the mountaintop, and he would then be with the people. He would be in service, and he would be in communion with the people. He would be in connection with the people. Because what Jesus and all the masters know is that it isn't just me and God. That the Spirit in me is the same as the Spirit in you. And if all I can do is access the spiritual awareness for myself, and I can't see it in you, then my work isn't done. Then my work isn't done. And that is our call, is to behold the divine in every person, to see the Christ Spirit in every one. And it's a tall order, is it not? It seems virtually impossible at times to do that. But what is true is true. If we are all children of God, then every one of us has that within us. Sometimes it's highly obscured by people who have fallen asleep to their divine nature, who have forgotten what they are not in touch with the light and the love that is their nature, and they're expressing the darkness. That doesn't mean that they still are not, that it's still not there, it is still not what they essentially are. And so this is why Jesus said, you have heard it said, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And I say to you, there's a second commandment, which is, love your neighbor as yourself. If he had just stopped there, we would have liked him a lot better, because it would have been a lot easier to live that one out, because who doesn't love God? Without any skin on, for example, just loving God. It's just this notion of pure love and pure forgiveness, and it's completely it's completely non-challenging in some sense. But to love one another, like it says in Les Mis, there's a line that says to love another is to see the face of God in another. And I think that this is where the rubber meets the road for us people, is to really realize that our faith can only be made more profound and more deep by how we are in relationship with other people. And if we can get to the point where we realize, and this is a high teaching, but it is the way, that other people are not there to stand in the way of our experience of God, but really to be the way, actually be the vehicle, the grist for the mill of our own awakening, because they can represent for us where we are still not free, where we are still stuck, where we are still believing that life or people or anything has to be a certain way for us to have the experience of love or peace or joy or wholeness. And other people, operate in that seemingly way of keeping us from experiencing that then reveals to us where our work is. Amen? Do we understand that one? Yeah, we do to a certain extent. So I want to share something rather personal for you, a couple of things, actually. How's our time? Can you stay a little longer? How's your brunch appointments? Are okay? Okay. Wouldn't want to miss that. So the deal was that, this is sort of a little telling on myself, but it's important because it's how I connect with you. The first ministry we were in, which was 20 years ago, I was being this classic introvert and then moving into standing up in front of people and speaking. I mean, that was all I could do. When that was over, was to really want to just run from the stage and go back to my office. And it wasn't that I didn't like people. It was just that I was on introvert overload by the time I had done that. Well, over the course of a couple of years in this ministry, rumblings began to happen. And the message that came to me through others, not directly from the people, through others, that people thought that I didn't like them. And I wasn't particularly awake at that point in terms of my own shadow stuff. And so I felt rather that was sort of ridiculous, because I knew I wasn't doing anything to hurt anybody. And I didn't really have ears to hear what they were saying. And later in a board review, the request from the board to me was, you're doing a great job in every area, except that we would like for you, after the service is over, to go into the fellowship hall and sit down and drink coffee with sweet Mrs. So-and-so and sweet Mr. So-and-so. And I just went, oh my gosh, I mean, take me now, Lord, because that would be like the worst thing. At that time in my life, that would be the worst thing I could do. Because I would have nothing to say to Mrs. Let's have coffee together in the fellowship hall. And so I resisted. I said, if I got all A's going in all the other categories, let's just skip over that one, shall we? I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So time went on. And, usually, if you'll notice that when you ignore something, you think it's going to go away. But when it comes to people and people's feelings and their experience, it tends to get worse. And that's exactly what happened. So the story got bigger and bigger that Reverend Larry is antisocial, he doesn't like us, and then so everything that I was doing looked to be an act against them because the story behind it was he doesn't like us. Well, I've learned from that experience. And what happened, and this is what I had to hear, and this is maybe the lesson that I'm trying to share with you. Somebody finally explained to me, they just said it in a way that I could hear it. They said, when you don't sit and talk with those people or spend a few moments talking with them, they don't think you care about them. And the very act of you just doing that would be enough for them to think that you care about them. So do you understand that although that may not be the way you feel cared about, the way they're wired and the way, what's that word, their love language is that kind of connection would help them feel that you care about them. So when I went on to the next ministry, I made it a point to do what is uncomfortable for me and becoming more comfortable over time. Because I don't want people to think that I don't care about them. I want them to think that I do care about them because I do. I do care. And so this was me pushing against my resistance to connect with people in a way that was important, not just for them, to hear this now, but how important it was for me to get over myself, to get over, well, this is what I do and this is what I don't do. And when you think about how relationships really blossom and bloom is when people on both sides of the relationship realize what the other person needs from the other person and the willingness to take that extra step, to kind of grow through the discomfort. In my case, growing through my introversion and having small talk conversations with people in the fellowship hall would have translated as care and compassion for those people, which as a minister, that is my intention, the people to know that I do care. I do think I have a larger role in the community than those conversations, but because sometimes the milieu that you create, the atmosphere that you create, determines all the rest of the work that you can do. And if the atmosphere is healthy, and if we feel connected, if we feel like we're cared about, if we feel like we belong, then we're willing to get behind a larger shared reality, a larger shared vision, which is what I'm really excited about here. So I want to do anything we can to help make this a healthier environment for us to be together, as a cultural value of finding ways to be together in love and to agree in love and to disagree in love, Because we are not all going to agree. How could that possibly happen? We can't even do it with, a couple of people in our family, right? So we know that it's not like we're going to have this sort of, Stepford wife experience where we're all thinking the same thoughts and doing the same thing together. But what we can have is have enough respect and care and compassion for each other. That out of that field that we create here, then when we look at what's the big picture, where are we going, what's our vision, what's our plans for the future, that even in the context of the variety of opinions, there's enough respect and compassion and space for people to disagree, that we can stay present at the table and move forward together with the shared input to our plans and not have it all break down, which so often happens in communities. You know this, and in organizations too. It doesn't just break down because there's bad ideas. It usually breaks down because people aren't facing each other. The people are trying to live out some hierarchical understanding and people don't feel heard, they don't feel listened to, they don't feel respected. They can't speak to power, And what we want to do here is we want to create a safety as much as possible for people to share. And the way that that's going to happen, and I think the best, is we have to find ways to get connected first. So the spirit groups will be a step in that direction. And I would hope that we could get at least half the congregation involved in a spirit group, which would be about 100 people when we launch it next month. And so if this is something new to you, I just invite you to basically do what I'm suggesting, is go beyond your comfort zone and enter in, and to see how that experience might deepen your experience of connection, how it might advance your spiritual growth, how you might feel like you can be a part of making someone's day by being a caring member of the group, by thinking of other people, by having someone that you can see on Sunday morning, because from those weekly connections, you now have 8 or 10 people that you now know much better than you did before, that will allow you to be in this larger environment, this larger arena that we have on Sundays, and not feel isolated, feel connected. We only need a few people around us to feel connected. And what I've noticed over the years of the ministries we've been in is that the people who come in as couples or come in with a friend last a long, long time. And the people that come in by themselves, unless they tend to be extroverts or they jump into service or some kind of a group very quickly, they find themselves going out the door because they can't find their way in the community. And to me, that's somewhat tragic. And it's on us if we are not providing the ways for people to make those connections here. So I'm excited about this. I think there's a lot more that we'll be talking about. Next week we'll talk about the spiritual discipline of compassion, which is taking connection to the next level. But for today, that's what I wanted to share with you. And please help us help you to get connected in this sense. And as this program rolls out, it'll be, although it has a structure to it and it has a format and a process to it, we're open to feedback from you as well to make it work as good as possible. So again, if you think that I don't like you, it's because I'm introverted and I don't go out of my way to have conversations with people, but I do attempt to express care. So let me know how that can happen here and how we can do that better as a community. I trust that the groups that we will be creating will be little pockets of care and compassion, which will help to serve a community this large that cannot just be done by a few. So thank you for staying the course as we go through this and exploring this with us and being open to the good that can come from this process. God bless. Thank you.